So, well, again, Olivier, I appreciate your time. My name is Lee Lamb. I write part-time for SmashPad. We actually started this originally way back in like 2001. So we've been kind of like grinding this stuff out for a long time. So I
All right.
appreciate your time. I'm a big Ghost Recon fan. So again, I do appreciate your time with this as well. When I heard about the update, it really struck me as a big deal, and I was digging into, because I know some of it had kind of been leaked to the internet, and I found that even military.com had reported on it. So a
Wow.
lot of
Okay.
people, yeah. So it's kind of like broken containment when you think about gamers. So even
Absolutely.
military.com is reporting on this. So I was curious, why go back to Breakpoint now? I know you have the anniversary coming up, but like
Well,
why focus here? Why start here?
it's Wildlands to start with. So we're not updating Breakpoint. We went back to Wildlands because it's a fan loved game. This is the one that they're going to mention every time they talk about the brand. For them, Ghost Recon is Wildlands. So that we are celebrating the 25th anniversary this summer, and because we knew the community was so active on this game, we thought let's just kind of produce some exclusive content and just offer it for free for the community. So really, Wildlands for us was the best candidate. So we already thought about a story and stuff that would fit with the context of Wildlands.
Right. Well, and I figured that's what it was. Yeah, Wildlands in the community, Wildlands and Breakpoint definitely have a bit of a split. I still go back. I play both because I think they're very conceptually different, and I think they provide different things. But it's interesting you mentioned this stuff about the story because La Llorona, I'm very white, so I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, so just have to forgive me. She's very much a different kind of villain, and she is terrifying. And what her intro is, well, it's something. And I don't want to, since we're going to put this out, I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But the interesting thing for me is La Llorona has numerous interpretations in Hispanic folklore. And so, it depends on the region. She's basically a weeping woman. She's in certain interpretations of the folklore, she is someone that is by bodies of water that is crying because she drowned her children. And I thought
Yeah,
that was very interesting because you start your
everything is
very
very
first mission on a
grim
boat.
around her.
Right, right. But like my family is part Hispanic. I'm in a mixed family, and so we started talking about this and just like the different types of folklore. And what was very interesting to me is that it seems like, particularly like with the vengeance portion that you see in some of these legends, it feels like you guys kind of like rolled a lot of this stuff together in an amalgamation and came
Yeah.
up with something entirely unique. And I was really curious how you came up with that and ended up with this specific character. She's very different than anything I've seen in this type of game.
Absolutely. We really wanted, a complex character to understand her. The more you're gonna play the new mission, the more you understand where she comes from and why she's got this current form as well. And the story of actually in Bolivian it's said La Llorona. So
Yes.
it's not
Yeah.
double L, but it's
Yeah.
and if you go to Argentina, it's going to be La Chorona with a CH.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Yeah.
made sure that we got our things right for Bolivia, of course. But the first thing that was challenging was, okay, but the La Llorona folktale is originated from Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
to start with. But in Wildlands, the Santa Blanca cartel is a Mexican cartel. They took over, drug trafficking in Bolivia. So we really, wanted first to do our homework about, what kind of folktale we wanted to use, really attach it to the presence of the cartels in Bolivia. When you play the main game, of course, at the end they're gone. If you play Fallen Ghost, then there's a new faction in play. We don't talk too much about Santa Blanca. So in Last Rites, there is like bits of every faction that kind of join this new cult of La Llorona. In our story, she used to be a CIA infiltrated agent. She's been exposed. She's been betrayed. Her husband, who was head of the cartel, shoots her and her two daughters. So you have the story of,
Right.
La Llorona and the folktale. Everything kind of, come together with that. And the fact that she actually survived being shot at by her husband makes her almost like a religious figure, and the
Mm-hmm.
population now is, considering her like as a saint. and she uses that aura. She uses that kind of, how do you say? She really, she's got like a following of believers of her new form, and she's got her new, like new motives, and most of it is around, protecting the Bolivian population, and of course taking revenge on the people that made her suffer.
Yeah, and that was something I really tied into too, is like, kind of digging into this type of legend, because like in Colombia, she really acts as, in that version of the folklore, she acts as sort of like an embodiment of the psychological backlash that happens to a community that has had this tremendous amount of violence sort of descended upon it. And when you look at the way that Wildlands is structured, it's the cartel, it's Unidad, it's these people that have had no real agency. And then when you play the game and you see why people would be, almost fanatical towards what she's doing, it's like, well, this makes perfect sense, especially in the manner in which these things happen to her, and then she's still here. So I found it so fascinating how you guys dug into that. And I think for anybody that really digs into that side of it culturally, I think it's really fascinating what you guys did with that. So so speaking of that, with the concept, did you guys start with that, or did it just kind of morph into it as you were coming up with the scenario that you wanted to build? Like, with just kind of having a new antagonist and all of those things.
I think it really started from this new antagonist, and at the very start, I was working closely with our character art director, and he came with the idea almost immediately with the design of La Llorona, the way we wanted to represent her, and the kind of even wrote like a mini backstory for her. And then, we got our narrative director involved, and we built the current story that we're going to release on Thursday. But I think there was already the base of what we wanted her to be, this kind of masked figure. She's got this idea that, her faction that we call Los Penitentes are also wearing like, rucksacks or masks on their face, because she wants to remove their humanity. They're no longer men, because she suffered from the people that caused almost her death. So, whoever wants to follow her is going to have to follow that rule of, you cannot show your face, for example. So, and that element was designed and almost defined very quickly at the very start with Eric, our character, art director. So and everything else started from that, basically.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. Yeah, it's legitimately awesome, and I could talk about that all day, because I found it so fascinating and so different than I think what you typically see in a lot of games, particularly in games like this, where you have the more anything based, military and tactical things like this. This is a very unique thing. It's not some guy that has a nuke or anything else like that, or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's it's kind of creating a bit of it's a kind of a gray moral area, because she used to be on the side of Ghost. I mean, Ghost work, they have a CIA handler that assign them missions. She used to be the same. Then she got so close to the cartels that she even fell in love with the head of the cartel. She got 2 kids from that man, and then she got burnt, and she was left alone to die in the jungle, and she kind of resurrected into something else. And I mean, the whole kind of thing it's not black and white. It's never black and white. Even for the Ghost in the mission, when you play it progresses. The more you go into mission bits, it progresses to something that exposes more of her motivations. The Ghost challenge the CI handler as well. That's this reflection about what's right and what's wrong. So it's totally not black and white.
Yeah, and there is that point in the mission too where you find out what she is, and they're like, well, it's your problem to clean up now. And I remember playing that. There's this very specific moment where you're just like, I don't know, man. Like, like, thank you for dumping this on me.
Yes. And nobody's like, I'm a soldier, so I'm gonna do this is why I'm here. The mission. We're gonna continue the mission. But he starts really challenging, Emily Price, because she's like, what the fuck? What are you doing?
Right. Right. Exactly. Well, and so that's actually a really good segue. So, like, I come from a military family. I've handled a lot of the weapons that are in the game, and so the level of the detail that you guys have, with the way that things look, the way that they feel, there is a level of detail in these games that I'm very appreciative of,
Hmm.
and I think that same care tends to show up in the detail of how scalable the game is. And again, I'm in software, and so I know doing that type of scalability is difficult. Um, because with Ghost Recon you have those the world parameters where you can play one shot one kill, and these enemies can absolutely
Hmm.
swarm you, or you can do it really arcade style where it's like I'm going to duck behind something and I'm going to heal. And so I was really curious, how you and your team think about the player base when you design something new like this, and kind of deciding, especially with where to kind of draw that line for that realism. Because one of the things I encountered is that I I wouldn't say that I would call even the way that I play Wildlands a game that is easy, but this was the first time playing Wildlands where I was like, "Oh shit." Like I felt like I legitimately was getting hunted, and like I had to completely
Hmm.
redesign the way that I played because I was getting swarmed in a way that I wasn't used
Hmm.
to. And so I was really curious, again, thinking about that realism, thinking about the way that you guys designed this, kind of where you find that balance. Because like I said, I was fascinated. It never happened to me before. I've been playing this game since it came out, and all of a sudden I'm getting my ass kicked, and I'm like,
Yeah.
you know,
Before I answer that question, just a little anecdote. I myself found myself swarmed with Unidad soldiers that I kind of almost provoke unintentionally. So I have to deal with a penitent test, but
right,
suddenly there's reinforcement for Unidad, and you find yourself running in the jungle hiding.
right,
And that moment
right,
is great because you can feel the
yeah,
pressure, the tension. Is like helos, flying over you, and you're like, what am I going to do to kind of, stay alive and continue my mission? But
yeah.
to
It
answer
flips
your
the
question,
script. It
yeah,
flips the
yeah,
script. No, and
absolutely,
previously it feels like
absolutely.
you are hunting, and this feels like you are being hunted.
Yeah, especially when second part of the mission, once you have the reveal, with at Vargas Villa, you're more into penitentes territory, and the Unidad are less present, but you can still bump into a patrol,
Right,
and if you start fighting them, you're going to
right.
trigger more stuff, and it's really good because then you have like the tension of having to fight or avoid the penitentes, and having to fight and avoid the Unidad. But in terms of how we designed the mission, we were more thinking about, let's offer the community, the players that played for almost 10 years, something a little bit more challenging. That's why, for example, we decided to use that part of Bolivia. Other parts are a little bit more easy to navigate. We took like the terrain that was the hardest to navigate, just to put a little bit more pressure on the player again. There's the exposition of, it looks like it starts like a normal insertion. We're going to kill someone mission, and it goes into
Mhm.
something completely different at the end. But we try to push for like the low visibility terrain. We're
Yeah.
not offering helicopters, so you have to find your way to travel by car or by boat. There's a lot of network of river that kind of works, so you can jump, in a little kind of fisherman boat, and then try to get as close as you can to your objective. So we really wanted to put the player as this squad in that goes into like a really black operation. They don't know much about it. There's a reveal in the middle of the mission. That's also why we're not offering like rebel support, because rebels, as they are in Wildlands, don't exist anymore. They actually joined La Llorona in her
Right,
cult.
right.
Anyone that was a believer could
Hmm.
join. So if you look at the Penitentes, it's a bit of a patchwork of uniform from Unidad, a bit of
Hmm.
rebels. So no rebel
Hmm.
support this time. You're kind of on your own,
Yeah.
with your teammates. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and like I said, I think it works great. I really have been thoroughly impressed, especially coming back to this after so long, and kind of knowing the gameplay loop. And even to your point,
Mm.
like I got to the point where it's like, all right, I'm gonna grab a helicopter, I'm gonna fly over there. And then when I was playing, I'm like, I don't have helicopters. And
Hmm.
then even to your point, like putting it in a place where it's like if you get attacked, you really are running into the jungle. It's not like I'm gonna grab a car
Yeah.
and I'm just gonna run away, or I'm gonna make a left or whatever. So yeah, I can totally see that. So well, listen, I want to be very, conscientious of your time. I really do appreciate it. I think what you guys have done is fantastic, and I think the fans are really going to love it. Just down to the detail that you did. I really enjoyed, like I said, the character herself, looking at all the different places that you pulled from. And again, just that kind of dynamic of things feeling different. And I know how difficult that is. Again, just between us, I've been in software, God, for 15 years, and I know how difficult juggling some of this stuff is from what people want versus what you can do, and being able to actually deliver something that is different.
Oh yeah. I mean, the community was super generous with us. We had direct contact. Some really hardcore players that that told us, what, for the last 9 years I was playing every day this game.
Yeah.
This is my game. And so they gave us so many different direction to get the game evolving. For example, there's a lot of role players. Of course, a role player doesn't want any UI, any diegetic stuff. Right. So we remove everything. You have the possibility to remove any sound cue, any the kind of arc for the grenade. Exactly, the detection sound. So you have the purest, more realistic experience of the game. And I know that was a big chunk of the community is really hardcore role players. So we managed to get more features for them as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, if there's one thing I could ask for as a guy who has shot a lot of guns, you guys still have that tinnitus sound that happens when grenades go off, that if there's a way that there could be an option put in to turn that off, that would be incredible, because I have tinnitus, and every time I hear that where it goes ding, my tinnitus goes, oh, so this is where you want me to get louder, right? So I have
tinnitus for 6 years now. It's unbearable, but
yes, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, exactly. So that is a feature where that sound cue can be turned off. Oh my god, that'd be incredible. So, well, listen, I really appreciate your time. It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you guys so much. And like I said, I really think what you guys have done here is really, really. Again, I think it's fantastic. I can tell just conceptually the way everything is laid out. It was so well thought out. And I think it's really well executed. So congratulations on doing it. I think everybody is really going to love it when it gets released.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you guys so much for your time.
If there are any other follow-up questions, Lee, don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you both so much. Y'all take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.